Hello, I'm Reverend Rick, and it is my honor to be with you today. We really hope that this video is a blessing to you. And if it is, please consider making a donation. People watch our videos locally when they cannot necessarily come to church throughout the United States and the world. So please join us and click the link below and make a donation. Thank you, and let this be a blessing to you.
Well, I am so glad that you are in the church today because you are going to get a blessing. And that blessing is called Reverend Deborah Johnson. Now, some of you are here, and so you've heard Deborah. Reverend Deborah, you know how powerful and phenomenal and knowledgeable that she is. Some of you are here for the first time to hear her, and you're in for a treat. Reverend Deborah is the founding minister and senior minister of Inner Light Ministries in Santa Cruz, and she is also a diversity trainer, training many 500, what do they call those? Fortune 500 companies. You can see I'm never a part of those. She was inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers. She has a long line of qualifications to be here, but that's not why she's here. As you know, I bring people here who know principle and who apply it to our lives so that these powerful principles can transform the already great lives we have, moving them from good to great. And Reverend Deborah is one of those people. She just touches my heart. As you know, I wasn't a big fan of the Bible, thinking that the Bible didn't like me, so I wasn't going to like the Bible. One of my more mature thoughts in my youth. So when I got to ministerial school, I had to take Bible. It wasn't an elective. It was you had to go and sit in that class. And I was not happy about that. But I will tell you that I renewed from the experience of Reverend Deborah, I renewed a love of Jesus that I thought I had lost forever because of the powerful way that she understands this work. So will you please join me in welcoming Reverend Deborah Johnson.
Thank you, Reverend Georgia, and extraordinary community celebrating 20 years. Inner Light turned 21 this year, so I know what that walk and I know what that journey is. In fact, a lot of my folks are in the house. I've got a lot of Inner Light practitioners in the house and people who are music ministers. Will you just stand and just let people see? Yeah. And before I get started, I also want to give a shout out again to the Agape International Spiritual Community and Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. It's his birthday. I'm one of the founders of the Agape community as well. He and I grew up in the same area of Los Angeles. And they're starting today in a new facility, a new interim facility. But they were there at their place for 20 years and they let that go. So moving on to bigger and greater. So I want to give a shout out to Agape. Say yes. Well, it's so good to be here. I was here a few months or so ago, and I'm just glad to be here. Here, literally, in every sense of the word. Here in the sanctuary, here in this body, and where I am in my own personal journey. Here to be a part of this great unfolding moment in history, whatever it is that's happening. I know it's part of the human evolution, and I can't think of a more extraordinary time to be alive. I really can't. And these are serious times. So I'm a baby boomer out in myself, and television wasn't on 24/7 when I was a kid. It went off. Believe it or not, television went off, and there was this little icon that were coming up. And back then we were doing drop and drill because, you know, the Russians, we were going to bomb each other and all of the rest of that. And you get this little thing that said, this is a test. It's only a test of the emergency broadcast system. You know, this is a test. Beep! This is not a test. Okay, the emergency broadcast system is on. And I'm not trying to be alarmist, but now's the time to stay woke. Now's the time to stay woke. Now is the time for everybody who is a lover of peace, a lover of justice, a lover of God, and a lover of humanity to stand up, to be counted, and to act like it. To act like it. So when I was asked to give a topic, I said that my topic was going to be, who is my neighbor? Well, I've been here this weekend. I have been doing metaphysical Bible interpretation classes. I did one yesterday, and I'm going to be doing one after this service as well. And I can have an appreciation for what you're saying, Reverend Georgia, about the Bible. And it's kind of ironic that I'm a Bible instructor. Let's just say, I already outed myself as a boomer. Growing up gay in a Pentecostal church at my age wasn't fun. It wasn't pretty. So this thing that I was getting beaten up with all the time, there's jewels and there's pearls. Every tradition is ultimately really saying the same thing in terms of what it means to be alive, what it means to be a part of a human family, what it means to have compassion and to show up and to really live your best self. And I think it is really important, particularly with the diversity that we have in the world today. Reverend Georgia mentioned I am a diversity consultant. That in order for us to really get along with each other, we have to learn something and know something about each other. And that means some compassion. And that means some respect. And it can't just be us asking for respect. We have to give the respect that we want to have. Yes? Yes. So this idea about who is my neighbor, it comes from a particular parable story that Jesus tells. He was using different kinds of ways to get his message across. He would do by miracles, he'd do by his own life, and he would often do by parables. And these parables were little stories that were designed to make you think. They were akin somewhat you might call to like a Buddhist koan, where he doesn't give you the answer, you've got to figure the thing out. At this particular time, within the scripture, the way that the story is set up, is that lawyers are asking him, what is the greatest commandment? I'm going to do a little recap of what I said this morning and get on to part 2. But the setup of this is that they're asking him, what is the greatest commandment? They want to trip him up because there were a lot of commandments of the day. Commandments that were behavioral things. Do this, don't do that, ceremonial, ritual. And they were going to jam him because no matter what it was that he said, they were going to question him, well, why that one? And why do you think that's more important than this? And, you know, that kind of stuff. But he one-ups him. And he doesn't say any of those commandments. Absolutely none. None of the ritualistic, ceremonial, whatever. He gives them a commandment of consciousness. He gives them a commandment of a state of being. That sink in for a second. It's not behavior. It's not something you can check off. I did this, I didn't do that. It's not something you can police your neighbor about. Did your neighbor do it? Or did your neighbor not do it? He ups the ante. And he says that there are 2 great commandments. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart, with all of thy strength, with all of thy might. And the second, to love thy neighbor as thyself. This word love that he uses is a very special love. It is not an emotion. It is not a feeling. It is the Greek agapeo love. The Greeks have a lot of different words for love. Eros, romantic love, phileo love, kinship love, platonic love, all these different kind of loves. English language, one word. One word for everything. Everything. What you feel about your guppy, to your sports team, to God, like this one, which says a lot about us as a society. All the words we've got for whatever, buildings and cars, one word for love. This love is a choice. It's defined as a volition, a direction of the will. This is a love that is a universal, transcendent love, and it is your choice to connect yourself to that. This is not the I love you because we're from the same tribe. This is not the I love you because I like you. This is completely the opposite. This is the I perceive that we are one in spite of the fact that I don't like you. And the fact that we are not from the same tribe is not going to confuse me about our connectedness. That's a choice. That is an override. See, if it were an emotion, we ain't always feeling that. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I'm so glad Jesus didn't say like your name. Because it's really hard to like somebody bombing your house. That's hard to do. But there's a deeper place that is a love. It's a transcendent love that is a choice love to stay connected to the whole. So imagine now for a moment if, I don't know, 10% of our lives, we actually, with everything that we had, with all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our mind and all of our strength, chose to proceed and to stay connected to the divine no matter what. As identity, this love is identity. It's a connection that's there. And if that's not enough, he ups the ante. He says, not only to love your God with all your heart and with all your soul, but to love your neighbor as yourself. As I mentioned in the first service, too often we confuse the second commandment with the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's a behavioral commandment. It's beautiful. I think we all should do it. But it's not enough. It's not enough. I can actually do unto you as I would have you do unto me and not love you. Not love you at all. Not care for you. Not have any compassion for you at all. But just because I know that there's some kind of reciprocity in the universe, I'm going to be nice to you because that's what I want back. It ain't even about you. It's about me. And how I want to be treated. Yeah? But the golden rule comes out of the second commandment. It comes out of it. And we want to do the second commandment. We want to do the golden rule and forget the second commandment. We want to just do unto others as we would have them do unto us without the love part. To love your neighbor as yourself. See, with the golden rule, there's still an other. There's you and there's this other person. And you do to this other person what you want this other person to do to you. The second commandment, there's no otherness. There's no otherness. To love your neighbor as though your neighbor is you. with no sense of separation. So you love your God with all your heart, with all your soul. You're connected to that entity, and as an extension out of that, everybody else as you. That's powerful. That is a oneness. He said that's the most important thing in the world to do. And the lawyers were like, okay. But who's my neighbor? They're trying to trip him up now. Okay, so that's fine. Who's my neighbor? Who's this person? Whatever that I'm supposed to love. And he tells a story. We've grown to know the story as the Good Samaritan. Well, most of us completely miss the point of the story and the depth of the thing that Jesus was trying to say. To really grasp the story, you have to understand the culture of the day. The Samaritans were the enemy. The Samaritans were the enemy. You were not supposed to have any contact with. You were not supposed to even speak to a Samaritan. So Samaritan is not just like this good do-goody. I want you to really catch that in. The Samaritan is the enemy. And it's true to Scripture, and particularly Jesus and the way that he taught, he would always use the most unlikely. He would always use the one that it shouldn't be or whatever, and make it them. And make it them, which was always tripping folks up. He'd say, you know what, the whores, the prostitutes, the harlots, the tax collectors are closer to God than you. The centurion, the Roman ruler, evil, pagan, occupier, he got more faith than all of y'all and all of Israel. You know, I'm sure he annoyed a lot of people. I'm just saying. So he proceeds to tell this story. And he tells this story about how a Levite, one from their tribe, is on the Jericho Road. The Jericho Road was an infamous road. It's about maybe 0.6 of a mile, almost straight drop down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And it was noted, very, very noted in that day, for being a dangerous road for bandits to come and to rob you. Now, in Jesus' day, your garments were collateral. Your garments were worth money. And there's a lot of metaphors and stuff about people and their clothing. So people wore all of their clothing to show their sign of wealth. So since this Levite is going and he gets robbed, he's beaten, he's bleeding, he's stripped naked on the side of the road. And Jesus describes these three people who come by, watch him, see him, and keep going. Now, as part of their tradition, being bloody or bleeding was unclean. It was like unceremonial. You didn't want to be around bloody people or bleeding people. In my Bible class yesterday, we were talking about the parable of the woman who just wanted to touch the hem of his garment. She'd had an issue of blood for 12 years and untouchable. Even a man couldn't touch his woman, his wife, if she was on her cycle. It was that deep. So nobody's going to deal with this guy. He's down there bleeding. Well, lo and behold, a Samaritan comes along. The enemy comes along, picks the man up, he puts him on his donkey, and he takes him all the way down to Jericho. He checks him into an inn, like a B&B kind of place that can hospital him, care for him. And he pays up front for the man to get care for a couple of days. And he says, I'm going to come back on a few days, and I'm going to check on him. And if he still needs to stay here, I'm going to pay some more. I'm going to keep paying until this man is well enough to leave. And then Jesus poses a question to these attorneys. Who was the neighbor? You asked me. Now I'm asking you. Who is the neighbor? And reluctantly, they agreed. I'm sure it was very hard to get out their mouth. But they said it was the Samaritan. Let's breathe that in for a second. It was the Samaritan. It was the enemy that showed the compassion. It was the enemy that stopped and gave care. His own people, in fact, did not. Most of us remember that Jesus said to love your neighbor. It's not like a foreign concept. What people tend not to remember as much is that he also said, love your enemy. He said, love your neighbor. But he also said, love your enemy. Understanding that your enemy is also your neighbor. There's something that we went over yesterday in the Bible class about verb tenses in Greek. The earliest documents that we have of the New Testament are actually in Greek. And there's this tense that's called the present imperative, which means a command to do something in the future, continuous and repeated. Continuous and repeated. We don't have that in the English language. So if I say to you, for example, be still, you don't know what I'm saying. Am I saying like just now? You can't necessarily gather from that I am saying continuously and repeatedly be still. So in our Western thinking, we're always wondering, when is it going to be over? When have I done it? When can I check it off the to-do list? But every single time that he gave one of these commandments, forgive, continuous and repeated. It's in the language itself. It's not just this moment, forgive this moment, but continuous and repeated. When he said love, it was continuous and repeated. Let that sink in for a moment. Continuous and repeated. He said, but didn't I do it enough? Oh, I forgave already. Can I check that one off? The to-do list? No. It's continuous and it's repeated. It's continuous, repeated. It came up in the class yesterday. Somebody said, well, it's really hard to stay in this kind of elevated consciousness. And so I said, well, how does anything get committed to memory? As a human being, how does anything become a habit? Continuous and repeated. It's not continuous and repeated as like a punishment. It's not to be hell on earth. I'm going to keep you loving and forgiving continuously, like as punishment. But when you do something continuously and repeatedly, what happens? You become it. You embody it. You start to live it. You start to be it, to the point where it becomes your automatic reaction to something. one of my favorite authors is Dr. Howard Thurman. He was a classmate of King Sr. and like an uncle to King Jr. He's known as being the father of the civil rights movement. He was the one that got sent to India to bring back Gandhi's nonviolent techniques to use in the American civil rights movement. First African American to be the head of a major seminary at Boston University, where King Jr. got his doctorate of divinity from. And Dr. Thurman was the first one to ever start an interracial church, the Church of All Peoples in San Francisco. Yes. And there's a line of his. He says that this is from I Want to Be More Loving. I want to be more loving in my heart. And he says, so that with unconscious awareness and deliberate intent, I can be a more loving and passionate person. Unconscious awareness and deliberate intent. That my intent has been so deliberate, and that I have done this so much that I am showing up and doing it without even being consciously aware of it, because it was such my deliberate intent. That's what this time calls for. The times that we are living in are calling for this kind of radical inclusion. It's calling for us to show up in a loving, compassionate way, as though my neighbor is myself. 3 weeks or so ago, the 4th of July weekend, I was the guest speaker at Centers for Spiritual Living in Dallas. It happened to be the weekend that all the protests were going on about the immigration policies, and particularly the separating the children from the parents. So I'm marching with CSL Dallas and some other clergy, City Hall in Dallas, doing the rallies and the marches. And I personally really go by the what would Jesus do question. He's my main man. Not all the hullabaloo about him, but just what would an awakened person, if somebody was really loving God with all their heart, with all their mind, with all their soul, and really loved their neighbor as their self, what would they do? How would they show up now? That's a question I always ask myself. And I have to admit, there was this irony that kind of came to me about what would Jesus do, when I flashed on the fact that Jesus was a refugee. A lot of people don't know that. Jesus was a refugee. That when the quote-unquote wise men were following the stars and going to Bethlehem to see this new king, so they're asking everybody, who's this new king? And everybody's like, what? What are you talking about? There's a new king. King Herod? Because that was the king. No, baby. Word got back to King Herod that there's a baby around here that everybody is looking to and calling the king. They don't know who it is. And King Herod does the unthinkable, but it wasn't the first time in Hebrew history, where he sends out all the kids under 2 are going to die. I know that's harsh, but that was the deal. We don't know which one, all of them. Mary and Joseph got out of Dodge. They got out of Dodge fast. And they went to Egypt. And they hid out in Egypt. And I could hear my internal spirit dialogue talking to me, and I thought to myself, what would Jesus have done if he got separated from Mary and Joseph at the border of Egypt? What would his life have been like? if he got raised by people who didn't know who he was or couldn't support him in his great mission or his great call. Isn't that an interesting irony? Jesus was a refugee. I'm not saying that I have all the answers to everything, but what I do know is we can do better. That's what I know. And then, as a nation and as a people, if we stand on the principles that we say that we believe in, if we really stand on equality and justice and freedom and fairness, and if we really stand on that, we can do better. And that now is the time to make that stuff a reality. Now is the time.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hearing to close out with this. I hope I remember it. There's a spoken word piece that finished not too long ago called Sacred Activism. And I think I'm supposed to close with this. One of the little spoken word piece?
Yeah.
Sacred activism is transcending the distraction of our reactions. It's using laws of attraction and co-creative action to put into motion potions to heal what we collectively feel. Sacred activism is rising above our comfort zones to confront what is right in front of us. Sacred activism is always we're one, never we one, refusing to give the final word to the spiritually absurd, striving to divide the divine. Will you do the work in society to redo what's true and undo what's through? Will you usher in a brighter day, a more inclusive way? Will you be like the saviors through the ages and dare when enraged to remain peacefully engaged? Will you stay woke and aware, give prayer and care, promote unity everywhere? Make equality a reality by creating opportunity. Give a hand up, not merely a hand out. Demonstrate what compassion and justice is really about. From education to immigration, birth control to gun control, from prison pardons to urban gardens, healthcare, spyware, empowering you to artistic truth. The list expands. Just take a stand. Make a demand for spiritual alignment. That's your assignment. Though the wall seems tall, still answer the call. Make the choice to find your voice. Hear our song and sing it strong.